Hey guys, tonight we drift into a world of stillness, silence, and the rustle of bamboo leaves beneath the breath of mountains. The moon is rising, fog clings to the earth like silk, and somewhere far from the buzz of screens and deadlines, you're stepping barefoot onto the worn wooden floor of a Zen monastery. You pause, not out of reverence, but because you're not entirely sure if you're supposed to bow, kneel, or just awkwardly nod at the ancient stone lantern staring you down like a judgmental turtle. Don't worry, you probably wouldn't survive the monastic schedule anyway. But that's not the point tonight. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where in the world are you listening from and what time is it right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin by stepping into the outer courtyard. There's gravel beneath your feet and moonlight painting pale shapes on the stone path. The trees lining the walk are tall, ancient pines and bamboo swaying gently, but not quite enough to distract you from how cold your toes are getting. Yes, you should have worn socks, but here we are, committed. Ahead, the monastery glows faintly with amber lanterns. No electricity, no buzzing bulbs, just the soft hiss of oil and the occasional flicker of shadow against shoji screens. A bell sounds once low, resonant, not calling attention but dissolving it. You follow a silent figure in orange robes, an elderly monk who seems to float more than walk. He doesn't look back, doesn't speak, and yet somehow you feel invited. It's like being led by gravity that smells faintly of sandalwood and old wood smoke. Inside, there's no welcome committee, no orientation folder, just stillness and the sensation that every creak in the wooden floorboards is louder than your thoughts. You move slowly through the halls, passing alcoves filled with bonsai scrolls and statues of a serene Buddha who frankly looks like he's been listening to the same playlist for 500 years and still hasn't grown tired of it. Then you reach the bamboo grove. It's not a grand entrance, just a sliding door that opens into something older than temples, nature, arranged with precision and care. A flat stone path winds through tightly clustered stalks, and every step crunches softly underfoot. You hear the distant dripping of water and the occasional hoot of a sleepy owl. But mostly, you hear nothing, which oddly sounds like everything. You're here to experience shikantaza just sitting. That's it. No mantra, no goal, just sitting with what is. You find a cushion on a wooden platform overlooking a koi pond, and somewhat skeptically, you sit. Not in a fancy lotus pose. Your knees aren't ready for that kind of commitment, but cross-legged, grounded. The bamboo sways, the wind touches your cheek like a forgotten memory, and slowly your breath stops being something you control and becomes something you observe. Here's the thing. Eastern meditation traditions don't ask you to empty your mind. That's a Western misunderstanding, as if you could just toss out 900 browser tabs of thoughts like dragging them to the recycle bin. Nah. Instead, you notice, you allow, you stop clinging. In fact, back in 8th century China, a Zen master named Dogen coined the phrase Shinjin Datsuraku, which roughly means dropping off body and mind. Historians still argue whether he meant this literally like a dissociative state or metaphorically as surrendering ego. Either way, it's not something you achieve. It's something that happens when you stop trying so hard. Just like the bamboo, it bends, it sways, it endures, it doesn't strive. You feel a mosquito land on your arm. You resist the urge to slap it. That's part of the practice, too. Not passivity, but awareness. The kind that makes you wonder, do you act out of habit or from presence? Behind you, the monk begins sweeping leaves from the stone path, slowly, rhythmically, not to clean, but to move with the breath of the world. You realize the bamboo grove isn't quiet, it's alive with stillness. It holds space the way a deep inhale does. It invites without needing to persuade. And for the first time in a long time, your thoughts begin to quiet, not by force, but by fatigue, like they too have been carrying weight they no longer need. Your eyelids flutter, not from exhaustion, but from surrender. You're not here to find enlightenment. You're here to notice that it never left Dot. The sound that wakes you isn't really a sound. It's the absence of one. The sweeping has stopped. The wind has paused. Even the bamboo seems to be holding its breath. You sit up straighter still on the cushion by the koi pond and glance around to find the monk already vanished. Of course he is. You stand, legs tingling like carbonated water, and start walking. There's no sign directing you, but the path ahead curves in that vague, mystical way that only monastic walkways and IKEA showrooms can manage, forcing you to trust each step. Ahead, you see another figure. He's younger than the monk, before probably no older than you. His robe is simpler, loosely tied, and he's dragging a wooden broom along a stone path under the canopy of leaves. Every leaf he sweeps is an event, a presence, a choice. You'd think he's preparing for a royal visit, but this isn't for someone. It is the practice. You watch from a few paces away, not wanting to interrupt. The broom makes a soft, brushing sound, almost musical in its rhythm. Step, sweep, exhale, sweep. Eventually, he looks up and gestures gently for you to join. He offers you a second broom made of thin bamboo sticks bundled by twine. You take it not like some grand student assuming wisdom from a master, but like someone accepting a cup of water on a hot day. Instinctively, you mimic his movements badly at first. Your sweep kicks up more dust than serenity. You're sure you're doing it wrong, like trying yoga for the first time in jeans, but he doesn't correct you. He just sweeps, and slowly you realize the sweeping isn't about getting the path clean. It's about where your mind goes when your hands are busy with something gentle. In fact, Zen Buddhism is full of seemingly mundane practices that become transformative when done with attention. There's a term for this Samu physical work performed with meditative presence. Monks don't sweep, clean garden, or cook as chores. These are spiritual exercises. One of the earliest Zen texts, Zazen Yojinki, literally translates as precautions for Zazen. It reminds students to maintain mindfulness not only during meditation, but throughout the entire day. Historians still argue whether this was an innovation of Zen itself or a continuation of Taoist principles applied to daily routine. But the message was clear. Enlightenment isn't a lightning bolt. It's a slow unfolding in every breath and action. You get lost in the rhythm. Your mind stops rehearsing conversations or building grocery lists. Instead, you're aware of the arch of your spine, the weight of the broom in your hand, the tiny scrape of gravel against stone. It feels true, real, quietly real. Suddenly, a bird sings. Not just a tweet, but a long, melodic trill that seems to slice through the stillness like a silk ribbon. The novice doesn't flinch, neither do you. The sound rises, hangs, and then fades. You look at him. "What kind of bird is that?" you whisper. He smiles and shrugs. "It sings." You want to argue, "Don't we name things?" Classify them, turn birds into data points. But then there's his point. The bird sings. You heard it. It existed. Is that not enough? He continues sweeping. You pause and take a breath. The forest is the same, but your presence in it has changed. It no longer feels like something you've entered, but something you've become part of. As the morning deepens, sunlight filters through the bamboo. It dapples the stone path in light and shadow like a checkerboard made by the cosmos. And there you are, broom in hand, not searching, not solving, just sweeping leaves that will return tomorrow anyway. You don't speak again, neither does he. You sweep until the bell sounds again, not to end the practice, but to let you know it continues just now in a different form. Dot. Later that afternoon, your fingers are stained faintly with ink, and your knees are starting to regret every floor sit you've ever agreed to. You're seated cross-legged once more, this time in a small calligraphy room tucked behind the meditation hall. The walls are bare, the light is soft, and the only sound is the delicate brushing of horsehair against rice paper. Before you is a blank sheet, pinned down with stone weights carved like lotus buds. Next to you, a small dish of black ink shimmers faintly, thicker than water, but more fluid than paint. You're about to paint an Enso, the sacred Zen circle, a single unbroken stroke drawn in one breath. No pressure or anything. A soft-spoken nun with the patience of 10,000 teachers sits beside you. She doesn't instruct. She doesn't correct. She simply paints her own circle, slow and deliberate. The brush lifts, the ink bleeds ever so slightly into the paper, and it's done. Imperfect, alive, unapologetic. Your turn. You breathe in, raise the brush, hesitate because of course you do, and begin your stroke. It's weird, crooked. The brush skips halfway through. The ink pools too much in one corner and fades away at the end like a broken promise. You frown. She just smiles and says, "There's your mind." She's right. The Enso in Zen tradition isn't about getting a perfect circle. It's about revealing the painter's state of mind in a single irreversible gesture. The practice dates back to the 17th century, though historians still argue whether the earliest ink circles were meant as meditative exercises or subtle forms of rebellion against formal Buddhist doctrine. Either way, the stroke is your mirror. Not what you want to show, what is. You try again. Another circle, this time less shaky but still full of hesitation. The nun paints another beside you, this one a half circle. Sometimes she says, "We leave space for the unknown." You like that, because you're starting to notice the teachings here don't come in paragraphs. They come in glances, in quiet, in the echo of brushstrokes and the ghost of thought. You dip your brush again, and this time you don't hesitate. The stroke flows not smooth, not flawless, but committed. The brush trembles at first, then catches a rhythm. The circle closes, and it's done. It's imperfect, unbalanced, beautiful. She nods approvingly. Now, she says, leave it. Don't fix, don't compare, let it be. You suddenly realize how radical that is. To create without editing, to express without judgment, to make something and not apologize for it. There's a reason Zen art is so deeply tied to meditation. The two are the same process over perfection, presence over polish. Somewhere in the room, another student drops a brush. The clatter startles you. The nun doesn't even blink. She sips tea, eyes half-lidded, like she's watching clouds pass. You take a deep breath. The ink is drying. The sun has shifted. And for once, you're not thinking about your to-do list, your inbox, or what you look like doing this. You're just here with ink-stained fingers, 3 wobbly circles, and a strange sense of wholeness. Outside, the wind rustles the bamboo again, not like a soundtrack, but like punctuation, the perfect moment to pause to absorb. And without realizing it, you begin to smile not at your work, but at your willingness to make it dot. You follow the scent before you see it. Roasted rice, toasted seaweed, a hint of matcha-layered aromas, so gentle they could be mistaken for memories. You're ushered into a small tea-room floor, lined with tatami mats, walls the color of sand and stillness. The air is warm, not hot, and heavy with quiet expectation. At the center, a woman in a deep green kimono kneels beside a low table. Her every movement, folding cloth, pouring water, lifting teacups, is a choreography of precision. There's no wasted motion, no urgency. She does not glance up. She knows you're watching. She just trusts that presence is enough. You're here for shinoyu, the Japanese way of tea. It's not a snack break. It's a ceremony that dates back to the 9th century, shaped by Zen monks and perfected by masters like Sen no Rikyu. The tea ceremony is mindfulness in motion art disguised as hospitality. Historians still argue whether its origins were purely spiritual or political tools of refinement. But tonight, none of that matters. You sit. Again. Cross-legged. Again. Your knees are sending tiny postcards of protest to your future self. Again. The room is silent, save for the faint bubbling of a small iron kettle. You watch as she rinses the bowl, swirls hot water, dries the edges, and spoons a delicate mound of green tea powder into the center. She adds hot water just enough and then begins to whisk. Not furiously, delicately, like she's painting foam with air. Your mind begins to follow her rhythm. Whisk, pause, swirl, breathe. You start to realize the truth. This isn't about drinking tea. It's about becoming the kind of person who can sit still long enough to appreciate it. She places the bowl before you, turns it gently in her hands, and bows. You bow back because, well, what else can you do? You lift the bowl. It's warm, almost live. You take a sip, and then the weirdest thing happens. The tea tastes like everything. It's bitter and soft and grassy and nostalgic. You're not sure if you like it, but it feels like something ancient just walked across your tongue and nodded. You look up instinctively, wanting to say thank you, but she's already begun preparing the next bowl. The ceremony continues not for efficiency, but for continuity. It hits you. Then tea isn't a drink here. It's a state. It's ichigo ichi-e, one time, one meeting, a Japanese idiom born from Zen that means this moment, this gathering, this exact combination of people, space, and time will never happen again. You sip more slowly now. You notice the way the tatami smells, the way steam curls like calligraphy, the way your breath slows down to match the room's pulse. There's no chanting, no incense, no lecture. Just a bowl of tea and you learning to finally taste it. The ceremony ends the way it began, gracefully, without fanfare. The tools are cleaned, the cloth is folded, the air is left undisturbed. You bow one last time, not to her, but to the silence she preserved. And as you step out of the tea room, you feel like something inside you was brewed along with the tea, a patience, a presence, a permission to stop rushing. Because now you understand enlightenment isn't a beam of light from the heavens. Sometimes it's just hot water meeting green leaves and a soul quiet enough to notice Dot. You follow the scent before you see it. Roasted rice, toasted seaweed, a hint of matcha-layered aromas, so gentle they could be mistaken for memories. You're ushered into a small tea-room floor, lined with tatami mats, walls the color of sand, and stillness. The air is warm, not hot and heavy, with quiet expectation. At the center, a woman in a deep green kimono kneels beside a low table. Her every movement, folding cloth, pouring water, lifting teacups, is a choreography of precision. There's no wasted motion, no urgency. She does not glance up. She knows you're watching. She just trusts that presence is enough. You're here for chanoyu, the Japanese way of tea. It's not a snack break. It's a ceremony that dates back to the 9th century, shaped by Zen monks and perfected by masters like Sen no Rikyu. The tea ceremony is mindfulness in motion art disguised as hospitality. Historians still argue whether its origins were purely spiritual or political tools of refinement. But tonight, none of that matters. You sit, again, cross-legged again. Your knees are sending tiny postcards of protest to your future self. Again. The room is silent, save for the faint bubbling of a small iron kettle. You watch as she rinses the bowl, swirls hot water, dries the edges, and spoons a delicate mound of green tea powder into the center. She adds hot water just enough and then begins to whisk, not furiously, delicately, like she's painting foam with air. Your mind begins to follow her rhythm. Whisk, pause, swirl, breathe. You start to realize the truth. This isn't about drinking tea. It's about becoming the kind of person who can sit still long enough to appreciate it. She places the bowl before you, turns it gently in her hands, and bows. You bow back because, well, what else can you do? You lift the bowl. It's warm, almost alive. You take a sip, and then the weirdest thing happens. The tea tastes like everything. It's bitter and soft and grassy and nostalgic. You're not sure if you like it, but it feels like something ancient just walked across your tongue and nodded. You look up instinctively, wanting to say thank you, but she's already begun preparing the next bowl. The ceremony continues, not for efficiency, but for continuity. It hits you, then tea isn't a drink here. It's a state. It's ichigo, ichi-e, one time, one meeting. A Japanese idiom born from Zen that means this moment, this gathering, this exact combination of people, space, and time will never happen again. You sip more slowly now. You notice the way the tatami smells, the way steam curls like calligraphy, the way your breath slows down to match the room's pulse. There's no chanting, no incense, no lecture. Just a bowl of tea and you learning to finally taste it. The ceremony ends the way it began, gracefully, without fanfare. The tools are cleaned, the cloth is folded, the air is left undisturbed. You bow, one last time, not to her, but to the silence she preserved. And as you step out of the tea room, you feel like something inside you was brewed along with the tea, a patience, a presence, a permission to stop rushing. Because now you understand Enlightenment isn't a beam of light from the heavens. Sometimes it's just hot water meeting green leaves in a soul quiet enough to notice. Word count 1081. Awaiting. Continue. Banda noi continue. Chat GPT de noi. Section 5. Eastern Philosophy and Meditation. The sun has dipped behind the hills, now smudging the sky with those soft end-of-day colors you'd only ever see if you weren't busy staring at your phone. You're standing at the base of a path that climbs steadily into the forested mountain beyond the monastery. There's no guide, no map, just a trail lined with uneven stones and a mild warning from the novice earlier. Don't go looking for anything. Just walk. You begin the climb. Each step presses your feet into the earth like punctuation. Pine needles soften the edges of the stones. Crickets sing with increasing enthusiasm. And the higher you go, the quieter it becomes. Not because the world is falling away, but because you are. The trail isn't easy. It twists. It demands effort. At one point, you slip and catch yourself on a branch barking your shin in the most undignified way possible. The tree doesn't care. Neither does the mountain. You laugh quietly and keep going. Eventually, you reach a clearing near the peak. A modest stone platform overlooking a valley wrapped in mist. In the center is a smooth, flat boulder, and on it a small moss-covered statue of Jizo, the Buddhist guardian of travelers. Someone has left a single flower at his feet. You sit, not because it's part of the plan, but because your legs and lungs file a joint protest. You breathe in, and it finally clicks. The mountain doesn't move. It doesn't run errands. It doesn't hustle. It doesn't obsess over inbox zero. And yet it endures. Through seasons, through centuries, through storms and stumbles, and tourists who definitely wore the wrong shoes. In Taoist philosophy, there's a concept called Wu Wei, often mistranslated as doing nothing, but more accurately meaning effortless action. Acting in harmony with the natural flow, letting things unfold without resistance. Historians still debate whether Wu Wei was a political metaphor, a personal discipline, or a spiritual surrender. But up here, none of that matters, because the trees aren't debating anything. They're just growing. You lie back on the stone arm spread like you're making a snow angel in the summer air. The sky above is streaked with the last light of day, and for once, you're not thinking about what comes next. You're just still. And in that stillness, something shifts. Not dramatically, not with fireworks or visions, but with a quiet certainty that the world doesn't need you to fix it. It just needs you to be present in it. You remember a Zen saying scrawled in one of the monastery halls earlier. Sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes, and the grass grows by itself. At the time, you thought it was poetic nonsense. Now, it feels like the most reasonable sentence you've ever heard. You close your eyes. The stone is cool, the air is crisp, and the mountain isn't moving. Neither are you. And maybe that's exactly the point. You're back at the monastery now, seated cross-legged once again, but this time in the main meditation hall. It's just after dusk. Candles flicker in quiet rows, their reflections trembling in the polished wood floor. Shadows stretch gently against the rice paper walls. The entire room feels like it's breathing, and you're not entirely sure you didn't dream the mountain. In front of you, An old Zen master in deep indigo robes sits absolutely still. His eyes are half open, his posture regal, his face unreadable in the best way. He looks like he's been sitting there since the Tang Dynasty. He raises one hand and gestures with two fingers. A novice monk steps forward and places a wooden plaque in your lap. On it, a single question burned into the surface. What is the sound of one hand clapping? You look up, confused. He nods once and then says nothing, which is his way of saying, go figure it out. This is your first koan, a paradoxical riddle used in Zen to confound the thinking mind and invite direct realization. It's not a puzzle with an answer. It's a doorway with no knob. You stare at the question. You think, well, one hand doesn't clap. It just waves. Then you think, wait, maybe it claps against itself like tapping your palm. Then you think, why am I trying to logic my way through this like I'm solving Wordle? The master watches impassive. The silence stretches. Eventually you just say, I don't know. And for the first time all day, he smiles. Because that's kind of the point. Koans aren't designed to give you something. They're designed to take something away, your certainty, your addiction to explanation, your compulsion to be right. One of the most famous koans is from the 9th century master Zhaozhou. A monk asks, does a dog have Buddha nature? Zhaozhou replies, moo. Not yes, not no, just moo. Historians still argue whether moo meant nothing, everything, or simply unasked the question. Entire books have been written about that single syllable. You set the plaque down and just sit with it. You notice your breath again, the weight of your hands, the tiny ache in your hips, the candlelight dancing in the corners of your eyes. And suddenly you understand something, not with your brain, but with your body. The koan isn't asking for a sound. It's asking you to hear differently, to listen with something deeper than your ears. You don't say that out loud, you just breathe. The master nods once, barely. A breeze flows through the room and a corner of the rice screen flutters. And for just a moment you hear it. The sound of one hand clapping dot. The sun has long vanished. The moon is a sliver barely enough to cast shadows, but enough to keep the world from feeling lost. You're kneeling beside a Zen garden, now raking. Yes, raking. A wide, shallow rectangle of sand stretches out before you, framed by smooth stones and two low lanterns that cast a faint amber glow. There are no flowers, no statues, no grand displays, just sand, and a few carefully placed rocks, large, immovable, and undeniably patient. You've been handed a wooden rake. The novice simply bowed, placed it in your hands, and vanished again like they all seem to do just when you think you need instructions. So you begin. You drag the rake slowly through the sand, tracing parallel lines that curve around the rocks, forming little rivers of silence. At first you try to be perfect, measuring every distance, straightening every corner. It's oddly stressful, like trying to make your own heartbeat symmetrical. Then you make a mistake. A line goes crooked. Your elbow twitches. The sand shifts in a way you didn't mean for it to. And for a breath, you freeze. But nothing happens. No one appears to correct you. No gong sounds. No whisper of disapproval echoes from the trees. You just fix it or don't. And suddenly it feels less like you're raking a garden and more like the garden is raking you. See, in Zen tradition, the karasansui, or dry landscape garden, is a form of meditative expression. The sand represents water. The rocks are mountains or islands. The act of raking is not about aesthetics. It's about reflection. The patterns come and go. The lines will be erased by the next breeze, the next footstep, the next morning. Historians still argue whether Zen gardens originated as tools for contemplation or as visual metaphors for Buddhist scripture. But the more you rake, the less those debates matter. Because you start to see what the rocks are doing, nothing. And yet, everything. They just are. You pause and run your fingers along the edge of one stone. It's cool, ancient, probably older than your entire family tree. And it's sitting here doing absolutely nothing. And in doing so, it holds the entire composition together. There's a strange comfort in that. You continue raking this time, not for symmetry, but for flow, for balance. You let the curves emerge naturally. The rake guides you. Or maybe you guide the rake. Hard to tell anymore. Then you remember something the old master mumbled earlier while adjusting a lantern. The garden is not the sand. It's what happens in your mind while you rake the sand. You didn't get it then. You kind of get it now. Time blurs. The rake scratches softly. Your thoughts slow. The patterns emerge, shift, erase, return. And somewhere in the middle of all that simplicity, you realize this garden doesn't need to be finished. Because neither do you. Dawn again. Or maybe you never really noticed it fade the first time. You're seated in a narrow wooden boat, drifting slowly down a quiet river just beyond the monastery's outer grove. Mist clings to the surface like breath on glass. The water moves, but barely. If you didn't know better, you'd think the boat was still and the world just gently gliding past you. You're not rowing. That task belongs to another monk, barefoot, silent, and apparently operating on some ancient vow of graceful movement. He doesn't speak, but you feel no awkwardness in the silence. Just rhythm. The oar dips, pulls, lifts. Water swirls and ripples, then disappears again, leaving no trace. You lean back against the boat's edge and let the motion take over. No destination, no schedule, just flow. This, the monk had said earlier in his single most verbose sentence of the day, is a lesson in Tao. Tao, or the way, is the core of Taoist philosophy, an idea that isn't meant to be pinned down or defined. In fact, the very first line of the Tao Te Ching by Laozi says the Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. Historians still argue whether Laozi was one person or a collective of scribes, whether the Tao is a force of nature, a spiritual current, or just poetic license for go with the flow. Right now, you couldn't care less, because the flow is literal. Trees pass overhead like thoughts you no longer cling to. A crane flaps its wings in slow motion above the water, then vanishes behind a curtain of reeds. Somewhere in the distance, a deer steps cautiously to the bank, pauses, then dips its head to drink. The monk glances at you. Water, he says. You nod, unsure if he means the river, the moment, or all of existence. Probably yes. Taoist teachings often use water as metaphor. It yields yet carves mountains. It's soft yet unstoppable. It doesn't resist. It goes around, over, through. It adapts to everything and becomes nothing in particular. The boat turns a bend. You see small shrines tucked into the riverbank, little stone structures covered in moss and coins, offerings for safe passage or maybe just gratitude. You dip your hand in the water. Cool, weightless, gone the moment you try to hold it. You wonder how many problems in life are caused by trying to grab the current instead of riding it. You glance at the monk. How do you know where the river ends? He raises an eyebrow. Why do you need it to end? You're quiet after that. You let the boat drift. Let your mind float. Let the water be the teacher and you the student who finally stopped raising a hand. Because out here, the Tao isn't something to chase. It's something you already are, Dot. The sun is high now, warm and amber, and the river has led you gently, inevitably, back to land. You step onto the shore a little dazed, like someone waking from a dream where they weren't quite asleep. Your legs feel unsure, like they've forgotten what stillness felt like beneath them. But the moment asks for nothing. It simply continues. You follow a stone path that curves between tall reeds and low trees until it opens into a temple courtyard bare aside from a few potted trees, a rusted bell hanging from an old frame, and a single monk seated cross-legged in the center. He's not facing you. He's chanting. At first, it's just a hum, a low, steady vibration that seems to rise from the earth itself. Then, slowly, syllables begin to form. You don't recognize the language, maybe Sanskrit, maybe Pali, but it doesn't matter. The chant is not meant to be understood in the brain. It's meant to be felt. The sound seeps into your skin. The rhythm isn't musical, it's cellular. It hums through your bones like distant thunder. You sit across from him not because you were told to, but because the silence between the syllables invites you. The chant continues, not louder, not softer, just eternal. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you feel like your body disappears. There's no line between your knees and the floor, between the air and your breath. There's just vibration, movement without motion. The monk is chanting from the Heart Sutra, one of the most revered Buddhist texts. Form is emptiness, and emptiness is form, it says. A contradiction, sure, but a sacred one. Scholars still debate whether the Heart Sutra was originally Indian or Chinese, whether its brevity is its genius or its flaw. But as the chant pulses through the courtyard, those debates sound like background static on a radio tuned to the wrong station. This is clarity beyond logic. And it's not about the words, it's about the space between them. Your breathing slows. Your heartbeat syncs with the rhythm. You don't chant, you resonate. Then the sound fades. Not abruptly, but like steam rising from hot tea. The silence that follows is somehow louder than the chant itself. The monk bows deeply. You bow back. He finally opens his eyes. Sutras are not answers, he says softly. They are mirrors. And suddenly you see meditation isn't about blocking thoughts. It's about letting them echo until they lose their urgency. The monk stands, walks away with the same quiet ease as everyone else here, and leaves you sitting in the warm hush of sacred stillness. You stay there for a long time, no longer waiting for the chant to return, because something in you has already picked up the rhythm, and it's still humming. Dot. The stars arrive without announcement. No trumpet of sunset, no grand transition, just a quiet dimming, like the world decided to whisper instead of shout. You find yourself beneath the broad canopy of the Bodhi tree at the edge of the temple grounds. Its roots twist like frozen rivers. Its branches cradle the sky. And yes, you think this must be where it happened. This must be where he sat. Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, the prince who walked away from wealth, from family, from answers, and sat beneath a tree. This tree, maybe not this exact one, but one like it, and refused to rise until he understood. You sit, not to copy him, not to chase some enlightenment on demand enlightenment, but because the tree asks nothing of you, and that feels rare. You press your hands together, then let them fall open again. The ground is soft. The bark beside you smells like age and monsoon and something almost like memory. And for the first time all day, maybe all year, you do nothing. Not as a tactic, not as a trick. Just nothing. The moon climbs higher. You watch it without reaching for meaning. You don't count the stars. You don't name the constellations. You just breathe, the way your ancestors breathed, the way every creature has always breathed long before words got in the way. There's a quote etched faintly into a nearby stone, worn down by time and moss. When the mind is still, the truth reveals itself. Historians still argue whether the Buddha ever actually said those words, or if they're the work of some overzealous 20th century publisher with a poetic streak, but you no longer care, because truth isn't always said. Sometimes it just sits beside you in the dark. A small beetle crawls across your foot. You don't flinch. You watch it go. A leaf drifts down and lands on your shoulder. You don't brush it away. The breeze shifts slightly, and your breath follows. You're not thinking about how long you've been here or what comes next. You've lost track of time in the best possible way because time doesn't matter when presence is everything. This, you realize, is the lesson, not a mantra, not a lecture, not a punchline wrapped in incense smoke. Just here, now, like the Bodhi tree, like the beetle, like the breath. And so, under the same stars that once blinked above a prince who stopped chasing and started being, you lie back against the roots, fold your hands over your stomach, and finally let the stillness hold you. No questions, no seeking, just listening. And you almost hear it again, the chant from earlier, the wind through bamboo, the river, the rake, the tea whisk, the brushstroke, the bell. It was never separate. It was always one sound moving through everything, including you, Dot. When you wake, or perhaps when you simply open your eyes, the world hasn't changed. The Bodhi tree is still there, its branches catching the early blush of pre-dawn. The earth beneath you is cool. The stars have faded into gray, and you realize oddly, you're still smiling. You sit up slowly, not because you're in a rush, but because your body and the earth seem to be negotiating a gentle farewell. Everything is soft, even your thoughts. You rise and stretch arms, reaching toward the sky in a sleepy, crooked salute to existence. A novice appears again because of course they do, with a folded cloth and a nod. Without a word, they guide you down a different path, one you haven't taken yet. This path leads you to a small, elevated room. A single bell hangs from the center beam shaped like a lotus bud. You're invited to ring it. You hesitate. It feels like too much power for someone who still forgets where they left their shoes every morning. But the monk waits patiently. So you step forward, wrap your fingers around the rope, and pull. Gong! The sound fills the room, the hallway, maybe the entire morning. It vibrates deep in your ribs like a reminder or a memory you forgot to remember. It rings, then fades, lingers, then vanishes. And in that vanishing, something profound unfolds. Sound like thought only exists briefly. It comes, it echoes, it leaves. Trying to hold it is like trying to catch smoke in a net. The monk nods. The bell is not the teaching, he says. The fading is. It's a core idea in both Zen and early Buddhist meditation impermanence. Aniksha. All things change, all things fade, even the good ones, especially the good ones. Historians still argue whether the earliest sutras intended impermanence as a comfort or a warning. But this morning, as the last whisper of sound trails off into stillness, it feels like a balm. You step back and sit cross-legged before the bell. You wait. No chant, no cue, no guided meditation track with soothing flutes. Just you and the silence that follows what once was. You watch your thoughts rise like the bell's echo, loud at first full of meaning, then slowly thinning out. You try not to chase them. Try not to swat them like flies. Just let them ring out and fade. And for a few rare minutes, your mind is a bell that doesn't need to be rung. The monk lights a single stick of incense and leaves it burning near the door before quietly slipping away. The smoke coils upward in thin spirals dancing with the last rays of morning light. And you think maybe this is what the mind looks like when it learns to let go. Not empty, not still, but drifting upward in slow, fragrant surrender. Later that day, you're sitting cross-legged once more. Yes, your legs are protesting again, but they're too calm to throw a real tantrum. You're indoors this time in a circular chamber with a low ceiling and walls made entirely of silence. No paintings, no candles, just you, a few others, and a circle of monks crouched around a platform made of polished stone. At the center of the platform, you see it, a sand mandala in progress. It's breathtaking, not in the tourist takes a photo kind of way, but in the kind that makes your breath forget what it was doing. Colored sand grain by grain has been placed with thin metal funnels in impossibly precise patterns. Swirls lotus petals, concentric symbols that vibrate with both chaos and clarity. The monks are focused, laser-eyed. Each movement they make could be mistaken for stillness, if not for the soft hiss of sand landing on stone. You're handed a cushion, again, because of course you are. You sit in silence and watch the mandala unfold, and slowly you begin to see it not as a piece of art, but as a ritual of impermanence. This isn't just a masterpiece in the making, it's a masterpiece meant to disappear. Once it's finished, they'll destroy it, sweep it up with small brushes, pour it into a vessel, carry it to a river, and let it go. That's not vandalism. That's the point. In Tibetan Buddhist tradition, mandalas aren't made for decoration. They're made to practice non-attachment, to remember that nothing, not beauty, not effort, not even spiritual insight, is permanent. Historians still argue whether the earliest sand mandalas were purely ritualistic or encoded maps of cosmic consciousness. Either way, they were never meant to last. And here you are, watching days of delicate labor become a soft breeze away from nothingness. You feel something stir, maybe grief, maybe awe, maybe both. The monk beside you leans in. The pattern matters, but not more than your ability to release it. You think about your life, the projects unfinished, the people you couldn't hold on to, the parts of yourself you once hated losing but maybe needed to. You think maybe you've built some beautiful things in the past that didn't last, but maybe that's what made them sacred. The monks work in silence. You keep watching. At one point, a breeze from the open window shifts a few grains. No one reacts. No one panics. They simply breathe and keep going. You realize they're not chasing perfection. They're offering presence. And suddenly, you're not just watching. You're learning to mourn softly, to admire without owning, to love something enough to let it go grain by grain. By the time the mandala is done, it will already be dissolving. Just like the sound of the bell, just like thoughts, just like us. And you'll be ready to watch it go dot. The sky turns gray-blue as the afternoon leans into its final hours. You're walking now slowly along a winding stone path that encircles the monastery. No one told you to walk. You're not heading anywhere, but something about the trail, its quiet bends, the occasional creak of cicadas, the way sunlight dapples through shifting leaves, pulls you along like a lullaby with legs. Your feet begin to fall into rhythm. Step, breathe, step, breathe. You're not trying to meditate. You're just moving, and somehow that's enough. There's a phrase in Zen Kin-Hin, or walking meditation. It's the practice of mindfulness in motion, taking each step with full attention. Left, right, heel, toe. Not rushing to reach a destination, but arriving with every moment. Your body becomes the breath. Your feet become the anchor. Around one curve, you spot an old monk tending to the moss along the path's edge, not trimming, not cleaning, just touching it, like he's checking in. You bow slightly. He nods. He doesn't speak, but his presence says everything. Even the smallest things deserve attention. The path narrows, becoming almost like a memory of a path worn smooth by generations of quiet feet. Trees arch overhead, forming a kind of natural cathedral. The wind rustles like whispers. You can almost believe the forest is breathing with you, and maybe it is. You keep walking. There's a rock with a single character carved into it, Mu. You saw it earlier in the koan, the one about the dog and Buddha nature. It's back again like a friend who refuses to explain their inside joke, but keeps inviting you to laugh. You laugh anyway, quietly. Further down the path, you spot a small wooden gate. Beyond it is a grassy clearing. Nothing special except that the sun hits it just right. You step inside and sit, not out of habit, not for ceremony, but because your legs and spirit agree this is the place. You close your eyes and simply breathe. No goal, no deep insight to chase, just you, just here. And you realize something you hadn't noticed before: the difference between peace and quiet. Quiet is the absence of noise. Peace is the absence of grasping. You sit until the sun edges low, until the breeze turns cooler, until your heartbeat begins to whisper again. This, too, is part of the path. And maybe that's the final lesson for now. The monastery doesn't teach through lectures. It teaches through footsteps, through moss, through breath, through paths that go nowhere and bring you right where you need to be. The light is gold, now thin-stretched, almost reluctant to let go of the earth. You're seated once more, this time not in a hall or a clearing, but back where it all began, the bamboo grove. Funny how it feels different now. The trees haven't changed. The moss is still where it was. Even the koi pond reflects the same sky. But you feel quieter. Not in a dull way, but like the static has been turned down, and now Every ripple in the water feels like a paragraph. A small breeze stirs the bamboo. The hollow stalks clink gently against each other, a wind chime made by nature, tuned by time. It doesn't ask for attention, but it gets it. You breathe in. You hear your own breath like you never have before, not as something unconscious, but as the oldest rhythm you know. In, out, in, out. And then something strange happens. You begin to feel your boundaries dissolve. Not in a dramatic sci-fi portal opening kind of way, just subtly. The line between your body and the air becomes fuzzy. The difference between the trees and your thoughts blurs. For a flicker of a moment, you feel like you're not in the world. You are the world experiencing itself with borrowed eyes and borrowed lungs. This isn't philosophy. It isn't science. It's just sensation. And it humbles you because you realize you spend so much of your life trying to become something smarter, better, wiser, calmer. But right now, sitting in a bamboo grove at the end of a silent day, you remember that becoming doesn't require effort. It requires disappearing. Or maybe becoming so present that there's nothing left of you except presence itself. You look at your hands. They still tremble slightly from all the sitting and walking and sweeping and raking, but they also feel real, sacred even, like they could hold the sky without gripping it. A leaf falls beside you. You don't reach for it. You just watch. A bird lands nearby. You don't name it. You just observe. And you remember something the calligraphy nun said way back when you made your first lopsided enso. Sometimes we leave space for the unknown. This is that space. The monks call it emptiness sunyata in Sanskrit. But it's not a void. It's the container for everything. It's what allows the breath to enter, the light to pour in, the thought to pass through without resistance. Historians still argue whether emptiness is a state of enlightenment or just an intellectual trap set by clever Buddhists. But here in the bamboo grove, there's no argument, only the kind of silence that explains everything without saying a word. You lie back and stare up at the shifting canopy. You breathe, and you let the world hold you not as a guest, but as part of itself. Because after all these moments, you're no longer visiting. You're home. There's a bell ringing somewhere in the distance, low, warm and distant enough to feel like it's arriving from another time zone or another lifetime. You sit up slowly, feeling the weight of your body differently now. Not heavy, not tired, just present. Like your limbs have finally decided to stop pretending they were made for rushing. A novice monk appears, bows, and hands you a small cloth bundle. Inside a smooth river stone and a single blackened incense stick. No explanation. Just these two items and a quiet gesture toward the exit path from the grove. You take them with gratitude and follow the winding way back. The walk feels like a rewind. You pass the calligraphy hall, the tea room, the garden now perfectly unraked again, the stone platform where you heard the bell. Every place you visited feels both familiar and somehow older, like they've been sitting in wait, not for your return, but for your realization. You stop at the riverbank where the monks destroyed the mandala. The sand is scattered now, no trace of the intricate geometry left behind. Just the river flowing softly like it never even noticed the ceremony. You kneel, place the incense stick into the earth, and light it with a match the novice left in your pocket. Because of course he did. The smoke curls upward slow and sure. You place the stone beside it, not as an offering, not as a statement, but simply because it feels right. The stone rests, the incense burns, the wind carries both. And now it's time, not for departure, not for grand endings, but for that final inward turning, the moment when the outer journey folds into the inner one. You close your eyes again. You let your breath slow. Let your body soften. Let your mind, already lighter, rest fully into the ground beneath you. Let yourself stay here just a little longer. There's no need to move, no need to wrap things up. The story doesn't need a bow because it was never about an ending. It was about a presence that kept unfolding like smoke in sunlight or ripples in still water. In this final moment, picture yourself seated once more beneath the Bodhi tree, its roots hugging the earth, its leaves whispering timeless things. The stars are back. The river hums. Somewhere a bell rings again, not loudly, but with the kind of softness that reaches inside your chest. Every breath in is cool, clear, and full of space. Every breath out carries away whatever you no longer need. Thoughts drift across the sky of your mind like clouds, neither good nor bad, just passing by. Let them. There's nothing to fix now, nothing to hold, just the gentle rhythm of here and now again. The world turns, the garden breathes, and you just by sitting, by listening, by allowing, are part of it all. Not a visitor, not a seeker, but the bamboo, the breath, the bell, the way. Let your shoulders sink, let your thoughts blur, let stillness find you wherever you are. Sleep, if it comes, will not need to be chased. It will come gently, like everything else when you finally stop chasing. You are safe. You are whole. You are home. That's the end of the video. Wishing you and your family a day filled with joy and happiness.